As the sixth patriarch encouraged us last week, let us begin by purifying our minds. Of course, now we know that our minds are already pure. So we can either follow the instructions of the head monk, who gave the instruction of cleaning the mirror mind of its dust that might have alighted during the day or week, or else we can go directly into the innate purity of mind nature. We might say 2 roads, 1 mind. So good evening, friends. It's our second week of our browsing in the Sutra literature. And we're taking a leap this week. Last week we focused on the Sutra, the Platform Sutra, the Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch, a very sort of simple, completely human drama, and the realization was expressed in great simplicity. The story of an illiterate woodcutter who was able to completely experience the true nature of his mind, not because of any intellectual understanding at all. So for those of us who lack great intellectual capacity, it should be very heartwarming to know that that's not necessary. And yet had a profound realization of the nature of his mind, because the nature of the mind is the same for everyone. So again, last week, very simple, very dramatic. we are now taking a great leap into the heights, the phantasmagoria of Mahayana Sutras. No longer are we in a simple world. Again, like the six patriarchs' world, we can, even though it's 1,000+ years ago, it can make sense to us. We can understand that life. But now we are, it's sort of like we are, I don't know if you put together your science fiction, fantasy, put them all together in one and add a strong, powerful dose of most profound wisdom and insight, you have the Lotus Sutra. Many people in the Mahayana consider it, the most profound. Not profound, but I mean its message was very profound, and yet ultimately very simple. It has many chapters, many different ways that it approaches. I'm just going to share a little of it with you tonight, and maybe Thursday night. So this is the Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Law. Let me give you a sense of what's going on here. So it begins like all sutras begin, thus have I heard. Once the Buddha was staying on Mount Gridikuta, now that's an historical place, Vulture Peak, near Rajgir, you can go there today. And if anybody's ever been there, it's not very big up there on the top of the mountain, okay? And yet he was talking to a great assemblage of great bhikshus, 12,000, all of them faultless, free from earthly cares, self-developed, emancipated from all bonds of existence, and free in their minds. And then he lists maybe 15 different names of all the great arhats. As well, there were 2,000 who were under training. And then there was the Bhikshuni Prajapati, who with his mother-in-law who raised him. She was there with her 6,000 followers. His wife, the Bhikshuni, she wasn't still his wife, but the wife and mother of his son, Yasodhara, she had her followers there. And then there were 80,000 Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, all free from backsliding in regard to perfect enlightenment, endowed with the knowledge of eloquent discourse, never retrogressing. All of them had paid homage to countless hundreds of thousands. And then he lists by name several of the Bodhisattvas. Manjusri, the Bodhisattva regarder of the cries of the world, the Bodhisattva great power obtained, the Bodhisattva never stopping, the Bodhisattva precious palm, the Bodhisattva medicine king, and on and on and on. And there was Sakya Devananda, one of the great Hindu gods, that was there with a following of 20,000. And it goes on and on like that. There were the dragon kings and all his followers and all these mythical creatures. Each of them were at the Buddha's feet. So what's this all about? I mean, and this sutra was put together several centuries after the passing of the Buddha by great minds. What were they doing here? What were they? My sense is they were blowing our mind. People talk about blowing your mind. They were blowing the reader's mind, taking us to a whole nother dimension, taking us out of our small, little, everyday life, everything very practical, everything very solid and real and permanent, the world of our dramas, the world of our egos, the world of, it's sort of like, we start out here in our meditation hall on Nebraska Avenue, and we just keep expanding, we're going to go into the solar system, and then we go into the universe, and then we go into the multi-universes, and it's just endless dimension, which also we are existing in right now. But most of us are not aware of this greater unfolding of life, of our life. Right? We live in a very narrow, small. So this, by giving this setting, I think they're encouraging us to let go of everything we know, everything we think we know, and enter this rarefied realm where all these numerous kinds of beings are all come to hear the Buddha, the enlightened one. Like this is the most significant thing happening. Anywhere, for everyone. The teaching, the preaching of the Dharma, the path of awakening. So, again, in our world, it's a very base world. What people base their lives on and what they hold as significant are very small and short-sighted. So they're inviting us to let go of all that and enter it. Same world, because it is Shakyamuni Buddha, and he gives a teaching for the sake of the great bodhisattvas called the Innumerable Meaning, and he's instructing the bodhisattvas. And then after he finished, he sat cross-legged and entered a meditative state. All kinds of special flowers rained down on him. And all of a sudden, from a white hair between his eyebrows, there's a great ray of light. I mean, this is right out of fantasy novels. The world shakes. And this light that radiates from illuminates all the worlds. And all of a sudden, everybody in that assemblage can see throughout space and time these endless, all types of beings practicing all kinds of teachings, all kinds of meditations, all kinds of spiritual practices, from the lowest to the highest. I see many kings who go visit the Buddha to ask about the supreme way, and then abandon their pleasant lands. I'm just going to And then there are those who live alone in seclusion and quiet and take their joy in reciting sutras. I see great bodhisattvas who in their zeal and earnestness enter the depths of the mountains to ponder the Buddha way. I also see those renouncing all desires, constantly dwell in seclusion in the wilds, profoundly to practice meditation, obtain faculties. So he goes on describing all these various types of beings that are practicing. And then Manjushri is asked by Maitreya, why has the honored one emitted such a ray of life? Give an answer. In other words, the Buddha's been teaching for such a long time. What is he doing now? And then we get a hint. He's about to preach this wonderful law that has not been heard in this world system. And Manjushri says to Maitreya and everyone else, According to my consideration, the Buddha, the world-honored one, is now intending to preach the great law. This is the great Dharma, the most profound teaching, to pour the rain of the great Dharma, to blow the conch of the great Dharma, to expound its meanings. And every Buddha, and again, in this cosmos, Shakyamuni is just one of endless Buddhas in endless worlds, endlessly preaching the Dharma. And then he talks about all the previous Buddhas who have taught this great vehicle sutra of innumerable meanings. I just want to read a little something that I really enjoy. He's going through all these Buddhas in past and all their disciples from past. And the last of the Buddha was called the Buddha Burning Light. He was a leader of all sages. He saved innumerable living beings. He was the mystic light, the teacher of the Dharma law. At that time, please everybody listen, at that time he had a pupil who was always of a lazy spirit, greedily attached to fame and gain, tireless in seeking fame and gain, addicted to enjoyment, casting aside everything that he had learned, forgetting everything, and was dull of apprehension, who because of the way he was, they called him fame seeker. Now this is a disciple of the Buddha, the fame seeker. But he also, by practicing good works, was enabled to see numberless Buddhas and to pay homage to Buddhas and to follow them, walking the great way, perfecting the 6 paramitas, and now has seen Shakya, which is Shakyamuni the lion. He will afterwards become a Buddha and will be named Maitreya. Maitreya is the next Buddha after Shakyamuni, who shall widely save living creatures, countless in number. He who, after the distinction of the other Buddha, because remember, Maitreya was the one who asked Manjusri to explain, and then Manjusri said, "That was you, Maitreya, right? The lazy, slothful one." Anyhow, and now he remembers that, yes, when the Buddha emits that light, it means he's ready to teach the reign, the true reign of the law. Yeah, so let me explain one thing that's going on in this sutra. At that time, Buddhism had been developing for numerous centuries in India, and it was rife with various, not unlike our own time, various lineages, yanas, ways, all within Buddhism, all seeking, thinking they had the highest, the other were the lowest, right? Many different types of teachings, right? And all of them in competition. And so one of the most profound things that this sutra is teaching is that there is only actually one thing that the Buddha teaches, one path, one way the Buddha teaches, and that is the path to Buddhahood, to full awakening, and to liberating all beings. That is the one path that the Buddha teaches. And 2, he's teaching that every being, again, every being, is innately, we might say Buddha, or we might say innately has the Buddha seed, which has the potential for full awakening. And again, this can sound very, philosophical, intellectual, but it is profound. And this sutra and this teaching, which is stated so clearly here, is so affirming. I mean, remember he just said, "So here's Maitreya, the next Buddha. He's getting ready for, for appearing in the world just when things are at the darkest." And in a prior life studying the Buddha, he was known for his laziness. He was known for his half-heartedness. He was known for his attachment to pleasure. And yet, he embarked upon the path and now sort of sits in waiting to be the next Buddha. In many different things in this sutra, the Buddha, talks about, and again, you can believe in past lifetimes or not, but it just gives you a sense of the capacity of beings. There's one great being, and where did he begin his career? He saw a Buddha meditating, and he made like a little clay figure of it. That was like this little child's first encounter, with the Dharma. And it started just like that. In other words, if everyone has the Buddha seed, and everyone has the Buddha seed, this is the fundamental teaching, then means that everybody has the potential for full awakening. Right? And that is why Buddhas appear in this world. That's why great teachers appear in this world. They know that everybody, again, everybody, high, low, educated, uneducated, and this very much ties in with our teaching from the sixth patriarch, everybody has this seed, which means that everybody who allows that seed to be watered, to be nurtured, can become a Buddha, which doesn't mean you end up looking like, the statue behind me. It means your mind and heart fully develop. Fully develop. And that's really, I would say, so significant. Because again, if we just relate to our own culture, what is offered to people as, the purpose and the meaning of life is what? What do we hear? What are we told? Purpose of life is to what? Wealth, fame, get a good job, have a good relationship, right? Eventually work up to the point where you can buy your own house. Now there's nothing wrong with that, but that's what most people aspire to. That they think if they can get all those things, then they've accomplished something. So again, you can see why, and again, I skip so much, the sutra just begins in this incredible, rich universe to inspire us. That there is a deeper meaning and purpose to life and has a richness to it. The richness of the mind, the richness of the heart, the richness of all the qualities of mind, loving kindness, compassion, intelligence, wisdom, patience, steadfastness, love, all these qualities are all available to us to be cultivated, but we'll see why that doesn't happen. Now what happens is, so the Buddha announces that all the teachings that most of his students have been following are not the most profound, right? And especially those who have really kind of, their goal in life was just personal liberation, which again is where most people are at. They suffer, they have difficulties in life, even at the most mundane level. They're stressed, they're anxious, they're depressed, they're lonely, they're all these kinds of things. And most people, practice a spiritual path for a little relief from this. Right? Again, there's nothing wrong with it, but this is, most people are practicing a very personal kind of personal liberation path. Now, that has a name, which is Shravaka, which means somebody who hears the teachings and practices it very personally, so they can liberate themselves from their own suffering. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the Buddha teaches that. And then the Buddha teaches other ways of awakening, and he teaches the Bodhisattva path, and he teaches all kinds of paths. Now, he announces that now he's going to teach something he's never taught before, and it is the highest path. And you know what happens? 5,000 people in his audience get up and walk out. I'm the Buddha. Right? They don't want to hear it. Right? They got their way, they got their truth, they got their path, and they don't want to hear that somehow, there's something more profound, something deeper, something more liberating, something more inspiring. And I think that's very human. A lot of us, we don't want to hear it, right? We don't want to hear anybody challenging us. We don't want to hear anybody saying, there's further to go. There's further to let go of. There's more to realize. We don't want to hear it. Right? We want what? Attaboy, attagirl, doing great. Right? That's what we want to hear, isn't it? And so when the Buddha gave his message, this whole setting is because I'm about to teach the most profound Dharma, the one Dharma. The one Dharma. Right? It's called the Ekayana. The one Dharma that is the purpose of the whole Buddhist teaching, to awaken people to their true nature, their Buddha nature. Anyway, he calls them all kinds of names. These dregs of the assembly. these men of little virtuousness. And then he says, but now they're gone. He says, so now our group no more has any twigs or leaves. That's not, we've gotten rid of all the chaff. We've gotten rid of this. So now we're a pure assembly. And so now the Buddha says a very interesting thing. He says, I teach one way, one path. It's all about the attainment of Buddhahood. But then he says something really interesting. And this chapter is called the chapter on expedient means. He says, listen carefully to what I'm going to say, Sariputra. The Buddhas have infinite powers of expedient means that they expound for all creatures. The Buddha knows all human beings' desires. He knows all their karmas, good and evil. He knows these all perfectly. Now, what does the Buddha do? He says he causes them all to rejoice. Sometimes he teaches sutras, sometimes he uses poems, sometimes he uses birth stories, sometimes he uses reasoning, sometimes parables, sometimes stories, sometimes commentary. He is now giving forth an incredible teaching. He says, even though I teach only one way, the path to Buddhahood, I use skillful means to help beings come onto the path, right? And so he's really delineating, while there is one absolute teaching that he's teaching, yet he continually is using expedient means, provisional teachings, to kind of get people onto the path and meet them where they're at. See, in this, what he's doing, he's breaking out of lower, higher. He's just saying, while there's only one awakening, yet there are many creative ways, expedient means to get people, right? And he's going to teach a parable. I mean, I invite you to, at your leisure, look at this. Oh, this is a nice one. All of the Buddhas, all the Tathagatas, by infinite expedient ways, skillful ways, save all living beings to help them enter the Buddha's faultless wisdom. Of those who hear the Dharma, not one fails to become a Buddha. And this is the original vow of all the Buddhas. And of course, we can take these vows. By the Buddha way which I walk, I desire universally to cause all creatures, all beings, to attain the same way along with me. Though the Buddhas in future ages will proclaim hundreds, thousands, endless, countless numbers of doctrines, in reality, there is only one vehicle. The Buddhas, the honored ones, know that nothing has independent existence and that the Buddha seeds spring from a cause. He's basically saying that the basic fundamental nature, the Buddha nature, the empty nature, the knowing nature of all beings is inherent already in everyone, right? The seeds are there. But like all seeds, they need to be watered. They need to be cultivated. Right? If they're not cultivated, if they're not watered, they will lie dormant. Dormant meaning they always have the potential. They never lose their potential. The nature of our mind never loses its potential for awakening. But human beings are who they are. How are they? We know how are human beings? Right? Lazy, and preoccupied. So many things preoccupied with. So the Buddha has to figure out all kinds of ways. How can I get these people off their butts and begin to interest them in something so profound? How can I interest them in becoming their full potential that they don't even know they have? This is the creative aspect of the Buddhas. They seek not the Buddha, and seek by suffering to be rid of suffering. Does that sound, And seek by causing themselves more suffering, they think they're going to be rid of suffering. It reminds me of, remember in Shantideva, where he says, childish sentient beings, all they want to do is be happy and all they do is create conditions for their own suffering. So here's the Buddha saying the same thing. For the sake of all these creatures, my heart is stirred with great pity, the Buddha says. And then it's interesting, he says, when I was sitting there under the Bodhi tree on the wisdom throne, walking about for 21 days, this is after his great enlightenment, I pondered, the wisdom which I've attained is wonderful and supreme, but all creatures are dull in their capacities, pleasure attached, blind with ignorance. Such classes of being as these, how can they be saved? You see, this is like 3 weeks after his great enlightenment. He's thinking, wow, what I've just discovered, everyone can discover for themselves. But who's going to be interested? They're dull, they're pleasure attached, they're blind, they're just all caught up. Anyhow, he gets convinced. And then when he became convinced, he decided he would go forth in this world. So let me move ahead. And again, the Buddha reiterates that Buddhas, the world-honored ones, by reasoning parables, preach the law tactfully, artfully, creatively, skillfully, to bring all beings to the perfect enlightenment. So then he gives this very famous parable, forgive me. He says, suppose in a certain kingdom town, and again, the Lotus Sutra is known for its parables. And again, stories, parables are great ways, profound ways, that get right to the heart of the matter in a non-intellectual way, because they tell a story that we can all relate to. So there is this in this town. There's a great elder. He's boundless wealth, many houses, spacious, big halls. All of a sudden, a fire breaks out, and he's got a bunch of sons. How about putting in some daughters? He's got a bunch of sons and daughters. So he sees this great fire burning his house. He says, I can get out of the house. I see the fire, I can get out. Yet my children in the burning house are pleasurably absorbed in amusements, without self-awareness, knowledge, surprise, or fear. The fire is pressing upon them, but they don't mind or fear and have no impulse to escape. Right, this very famous analogy, the burning house. And there's an early Buddhist sutra where he talks, called the Fire Sermon, where the Buddha says, our senses are on fire. What are they on? And then when he talks about on fire with greed and desire and endless wanting and needing. But here he says, because, I'll just kind of paraphrase, he's calling to his children. Hey, the house is on fire. Don't you smell the smoke? Come out, come out. But you know what the children are doing? Take a guess. What do children do? They're playing with their toys. They're so absorbed in their playing, they don't even hear him. Right? I think the analogy is clear. So the teachers are calling to us. You're in a burning house. At the very least, we might say, the world's on fire with impermanence, sickness, old age, and death. Change is happening all the time. Right? We don't have to, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. This endless fire. Fire just burns things up. And in a certain way, even, our life is always being burnt up. And very soon it may come to an end. We don't know when. So the Buddha's trying to wake us up to say, he wants to get us out of the house. Right? He wants to get us out of the house. And he tries to just a very direct approach. The house is on fire, come on out. Ultimately, the life you're leading is ultimately unsatisfactory, ultimately meaningless, because it all adds up, you're going to have to leave it all anyhow. I can show you a much more meaningful, kind of ongoing, permanent, in an impermanent way of being, way of living. I can show you a life of great purpose and meaning. Right? But what? We're playing, aren't we? Sentient beings, we're playing. So he's got a dilemma. They're attached to their place. He says, I got to get them out of the house because they'll be burned. So he calls, come out quickly. And even though he calls, they don't hear. So now he's thinking, this is, and we all know this. This is a Buddha who's really trying to profoundly help. But all of us, whether it's ourself, whether it's our family, our friends, people we know, we all, are aware that either ourselves, the people we love, the people we care about, friends, families, people in the community, the world, right? We see their suffering. And the question is, how do we help them? I think we all understand it's not easy to really know how to help somebody, right? We are very good at giving advice. And I think if we're honest, we would realize most people don't take our advice. Most of us don't take other people's advice, right? People have probably been giving us good advice maybe now we listen, but for much of our life, people were giving us good advice about, what would be beneficial, what would be helpful, how we could change our way, and yet we don't listen to them, right? And yet people don't listen to us. So the Buddha is going, I see their suffering. I see their suffering, but they don't think they're suffering, right? Think about addicts. Addicts, God. What a ghostly existence they lead. And yet, as we know, until they're ready to change, they don't see it. Right? Denial. The elephant in the living room, those kind of expressions. The elephant in the living room. There's this big elephant in the living room that's taking up all the room, and everybody's uncomfortable and having to move around, and yet nobody names it. Okay? So the Buddha says, I got to get him out of there. So then the Buddha thinks, each one of them has certain things that they like to play with. So he says to them, I have something for you, rare and precious. Come on out. They're outside. If you don't come and get them, you'll be sorry afterwards. I have goat carts. It's a little culturally specific. I have goat carts, deer carts, and bullock carts outside the gate to play with. Come out quickly. I'll give you whatever you want. Thereupon the children, hearing of the attractive playthings mentioned by their father, and because they suit their wishes, these are the things they like to play with, every one of them eagerly, they even push each other and race against each other, come scrambling out of the house. This is profound, right? Now, the interesting thing is, when they get out, the father is in happiness. He's so relieved, he's so happy that his children are out of danger. And the children say to their father, "Father, now please give us those lovely things you promised that we could play with, the goat carts, the deer carts, the bullock's carts." But what does the father do? He doesn't give them any of those. He gives them a great, wonderful, white bullock cart or ox cart. Something more precious, something more beautiful, right, than what he had promised them. This parable is the basis of what in Buddhism is called upaya, or skillful means. It is really the art of compassion. We have wisdom. There's so many teachings and practices, meditation, mindfulness, it's the right view. So many teachings in Buddhism that teach wisdom. Understanding the nature of reality, understanding the causes and conditions that create suffering, how to, all the path about freeing oneself from suffering. There's so much wisdom in the Buddhist teaching. But if you have all this wisdom, it's like if you have a great product that you've developed, but you always have an issue, How am I going to get people to buy it? You see? That's upaya. People are suffering, but they don't know they're suffering. Or they don't know there's an end of suffering. So how can I get their attention? Now, somebody might say, so let me get this straight. The father lied to his children, right? He promised them things he didn't have, and then he gave them something that he considered the most precious gift he could give them. But he didn't tell them about it because he knew they wouldn't have come out for that. Because they like goat carts. They like little deer carts. And so what does that have to do with us? So, the Buddha way, the real gift that the Buddha has, the masters have, is the path to full awakening. The path to the cessation of suffering. The path to, true happiness and well-being. The path of ease. But if you tell people that, they don't get it. It's too far away from them, right? Because they're dealing with what? Their stress, right? Tell me how I can ease my stress. Tell me how I can be less anxious. Tell me how I can be less worried. Tell me how I can be less depressed, you see? So even though you have something quite wonderful and transformative, people won't buy it. They won't even believe it's possible. So that's why the Buddha didn't tell his children, I have this wonderful, beautiful ox cart, white, it's covered with jewels. It's like, children want what? They want a puppy. You don't have a little kitten for me? See, children don't know what's valuable, do they? No, we don't expect them to. They like their dolls. So how do you get them motivated? I have a nice doll for you if you do this. Oh, they pay attention. Yeah, I can help you ease your stress. Yeah, I can help lessen your depression. I can help lessen your anxiety. Yeah, the Buddha Dharma can help you be a little more patient in life. The Buddha Dharma can help you be a little less angry. Now, the Buddha Dharma offers something much vaster and greater than that, right? But people are where they're at. They're stuck where they're at. They want relief where they're at, right? So, in skillful means we use expedient means, provisional teachings. Oh, like, try this one on. The Buddha says, he's always teaching the end of suffering. The Buddha says, I teach the end of suffering to get their attention. To motivate them. To get them off their butt. Yeah, I'm suffering. I want to end my suffering. But the real gift of the Buddha is you already are free of your suffering in your nature. Realize your true nature and your suffering by itself, will dissipate. But people don't believe that, do they? Right? So the Buddhas, the teachers, use all these wonderful expedient means. But they're all expedient means, the Buddha is revealing, to help people get to the point where he can show them the ox cart. And they'll want to ride in the ox cart, the big white ox cart. And he asks, the Buddha then, after he tells us, he asks his disciple Sariputra, what's your opinion? Has the elder, in giving great carts of precious substances to his children equally, has he been guilty of falsehood? Remember I said, it's a little bit of false advertising with the Buddha. I mean, upaya, skillful means, is a little bit of false advertising. And Sariputra says, no, Buddha. The elder only caused his children to escape the disaster of fire and preserve their bodies alive. He committed no falsity. Why? Because he has in such manner preserved their bodies alive, and they've also obtained some playthings. He saved them from that burning house. Even if that elder did not give them one of the smaller carts, he's not false. Why? Because the elder from the very first had this intention. I will by skillful means cause my children to escape. For this reason, he is not false. And then the Buddha says to Saripatra, good, it's just as you say. The Buddha is the Father of all the worlds, who has forever entirely ended all the fear, despondency, distress, ignorance, and darkness of within his own mind, he's saying, and has perfected boundless knowledge, power, fearlessness, spiritual power. And even though he's greatly merciful and compassionate, ever tireless, ever seeking the good, and he's ever benefiting all being, but he has taken birth in this triple world. This is the world we live in, the world of desire, the world of form, and the world of formlessness. In this old, decayed, burning house, to save living creatures from the fires of birth, old age, disease, death, grief, suffering, foolishness, darkness, the three poisons, and to teach them to obtain perfect enlightenment. He sees how all beings are scorched by birth, sickness, old age, and death, grief and sorrow, suffer all kinds of distress by reason of the five desires and their greed for gain, and their attachment to their desires and their pursuits, and how they, experience such suffering. Absorbed in all these things, all living creatures take their pleasure. And they are neither alarm nor fear. They're never satisfied and never seek to escape the burning house. The Buddha, looking at all this, reflects, I am the father of all creatures, or the mother. I must snatch them from their suffering and give them the bliss of infinite, boundless Buddha wisdom for them to play with. He says, as long as these beings have not escaped, but still stay in that house, that burning house, how can they ever understand the Buddha wisdom? So this is profound, you know. And there's lots of other things in here where the Buddha is very clear about you teach people where they're at. You know, there are lots of teachers who can be very profound and teach the highest wisdom and the highest truth, and, you know, it's all good. But it really doesn't really help people, or help most people, because it doesn't touch it doesn't touch them where they're stuck. Right? And the Buddha's saying, you know, your teaching should always be geared to where people are, helping them get unstuck, helping them, you know, move along. Right? So, at a certain point, their suffering will have diminished enough that they can look outside of their issues, look outside of their problems, look outside of their personal drama, and see something vaster and wider. Right? But most people aren't there. So the Buddha's saying, yeah, this is part of the path. Help them where they are. Help liberate them from where they are. That's skillfulness. That's the way to help people. So it's a profound teaching because it's based on compassion. Again, compassion in Buddhism, karuna, means it's not empathy. It's not less the Buddha just didn't see, I feel the suffering of all beings. He said, they're suffering, and I want to do everything I can to liberate them. Everything I can to help free them from their suffering. That's compassion. It's not just empathy. And yet, as we all know, most of us, if we're honest, we're not very good at even liberating our own self from our suffering, even though we know better. Many of us have the teachings, we've been exposed to the teachings, we've heard the teachings, we listen to the podcast, we read the books, we talk it, and yet, the truth is what? Do we really apply it in our life? No. Or sporadically or intermittently, So, the Buddha understands that. So, how do I help these people? How do I help them? That's his concern. And again, there are all kind of vehicles. There's the vehicles of the Shravakas, the ones who are just seeking enlightenment or the end of suffering for themselves, and those who want to seek it to be a benefit. But then there's that deeper, which is people who want to be totally awake, really awakened to their inheritance. Yeah, the parable. Any questions about this? Any questions? Online? In the hall? Any questions about this teaching? that we're all inherently Buddhas, but that skillfulness is needed to be original teachings. Yes.
So, I've wondered about this, about whether or not the Buddha taught to the people where they were at, as far as speaking about rebirth and such. Do you think that's something, because do you think that he used things like that or anything else that may or may not have been true?
Well, again, I mean,
I question whether or not, I don't know if
all I'd
it's
say to
reality.
you, at that time, in that culture, it was in the culture to believe in many lifetimes.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. So that was just the culture. Everybody believed it. He shifted from reincarnation to rebirth because he didn't believe people were solid. But yeah, that sense of continuation of consciousness and all that. Yeah, he taught that. He didn't make that essential part of his dharma, but because he didn't have to. Everybody believed it. It's like I don't know, if you grow up in a Christian culture, does everybody believe in heaven? Yeah, right? Heaven and hell. It's just, you know what I'm saying? And if you grow in a culture, then you would use that.
But do you think he believed it?
You'd have to ask. Do we know that he referred to his past lifetimes? Yes. Do we know that he talked about that he had this ability to, when he encountered a human being, that he could see all their causes and conditions, all their past lives? Yeah, he said that was one of the powers that awoke with him in his great enlightenment. Yeah, so do we have a transcript? We don't have a transcript. We don't have it on tape. We don't have it on video. Basically, we know that he taught for 50, 60 years. We know he had many, many disciples who were present at all his talks and encounters. We know they had a council after he passed, where they actually, because again, they had good memories then. It was it wasn't a writing culture. So, memorization, they were much sharper. Do we know that after he passed, that they all got together and decided, yes, a number of them, yeah, we heard the Buddha say this. But it wasn't until about 100 years after that even began to write it down. So, at the end of the day, do we know? No, but we have there are enough sutras, there are enough, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, where you see a repetition of it, so, yeah. But again, the Buddha was very practical. When people tried to drag him into discussions about rebirth or reincarnation and this, that, he would say, is this going to really help you end your suffering if I answer this question, or is this more just philosophical? And so he really wouldn't get into it because he really wanted to help free people from their suffering. That was his purpose. Yeah. Any other questions? Online, anybody? Yeah, so let's try. I was going to read the other really famous one, but there's a nice one here about so this is about this is another parable. So a man goes to his best friend's house, he gets drunk, and he falls asleep. Meanwhile, his friend has to go about official business, but there was something he wanted to give as a gift to his friend, but his friend got drunk and he's asleep. So it was a valuable kind of gem. And so he can't give it to him because he's got to leave, and the guy's passed out drunk. So he sews it into his clothing. Okay? The man, being drunk and asleep, knows nothing of it. When he wakes up, he continues his travels. He reaches the country he was going to. And there, for getting enough food for himself and clothing, he has to expend much labor and effort. And he undergoes exceedingly great hardship. And he becomes content, even if he can obtain but a little bit. So you get the setup. This man has sewn into his clothes a precious jewel, valuable, in this sense, worth a lot of money. He doesn't know it. So he labors very hard just to feed himself, just to clothe himself, just to take care of the necessities of life. Right? He doesn't know, he doesn't need to do all that because he already has enough. So there he is laboring, working incredibly hard, much labor, and obtaining little. And then at some point, he happens to meet his friend. He said, how come you're working so hard for your food and clothing? I wanted you to live in comfort and be able to satisfy all your senses. So when, he names the year and the month and such a day, I tied a priceless jewel within your garments. Now, as of when I sewed it in, it's still here, it's still present. But you in your ignorance are slaving and worrying just to keep yourself alive. How very stupid. Go now and exchange that jewel for what you need and do whatever you will, free from all poverty and shortage. And then, so that's again, as a parable, it's very meaningful. Because this, again, what is the Buddha teaching us? We all have this precious jewel within us, within our own heart mind. It is valuable. It can give us all we desire. What do we desire? Most people, if you really kind of break it down, what do you really want? People will say, what? What do you really want in life? Well, people say, well, I want a good job, I want to get this. Okay. If you get all that, then what? How will you be? Oh, well, then I'll be happy. Oh, then I'll be content, right? Then I won't have to worry anymore. Oh. So the Buddha's saying, you already have that capacity within your own mind. You already have everything you want. Everything you need, you already have it. You just don't know it. So in Buddhism we call that ignorance. It's I don't know if it's stupidity, but it's just we don't know that we have a precious jewel on us, and we're walking around like we're poor, like we're penniless. Now again, the fact that it's sewn in his clothes means it's not obvious. You can't see it. You have to know it's there, right? See, it was only when his friend told him, it's there. Go look in your coat and just cut it open a little bit. You'll see it's there. That's the role of the Buddha. That's the role of teachers. They know it's already there within you, but you don't know it. That's their job. They tell you about it and they tell you exactly where to look. Because the Buddhas and the masters, it makes them sad that sentient beings walk around feeling so deficient, so, kind of emotionally impoverished. So stressed, so, sentient beings, they work so hard because they want to be happy. You see, because whenever I ask anybody, well, if you do this, and if you get this, and you get all your ducks lined up, and then you have the right relationship, you have the right job, you have the right this, you have, then how will you be? And they'll say what? I'll be happy. I'll be content. My mind will be at peace. But you already have that capacity right now without doing all that work. People can't believe it. Why can't they believe it? Why can't they believe it? It's not their experience. Aha. So you have to what? Trust. That when somebody tells you, go look in your coat, there's a jewel sewn in there, you believe them. But most people go, no, it can't be. They never go and look. Yeah. So, again, these simple parables are really quite profound. He said the Buddha is also like this. When he was a bodhisattva, sort of like a Buddha in training, he taught us to conceive the idea of perfect wisdom, but we soon forgot. So these are his monastic followers. He said, when we were first in training with the Buddha, he told us about full enlightenment, about perfect wisdom, but we forgot, and here they're saying, we took it's sort of like saying. Yeah, what's it like? It's like saying, again, I'm trying to put it in our own words. Again, we settle for less. Again, we settle for a little more calm, a little more calmness, a little less stress, a little more good heart. You see? Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But this is what his arhats are saying. We forgot the capacity that we all have to be fully awake. We forgot that that's what the Buddha teaches, and we settled for a kind of personal, spiritual, psychological life that is much better than it used to be. Not denying that, but it's not fulfilling our capacity. Our capacity. And so again, in this sutra, we are, in this very simple example, the Buddha is teaching us, each and every one of us has a precious jewel. We are heirs already to great spiritual wealth. All we have to do is what? Mine it, like a miner, we have to mine it. It's there, but if we don't mine it, if we don't do the work to bring it out, we'll never, we'll never experience it. It's like, what's it like? Drilling for oil, right? Forgive me, I know fossil fuels are, but this is an old analogy. The oil's in the ground, right? All you got to do is what? What do you got to do? What? You got to drill. And sometimes the drilling goes easy, and sometimes it goes a little more difficult, and sometimes it's more to the surface, and sometimes it's deeper. But I don't know, whatever they are, the geologist or whatever has already told us it's there. All you got to do is drill. But we're on top, you see. We don't see it. We're up on the ground. So we have to believe the geologist, don't we? When they say, yeah, we've analyzed and assessed, yeah, there's oil down there, 100 feet down. Yeah, 200, I don't know anything about oil. Yeah. We have to believe that. And so why don't we all just stop a second and just reflect on what we've heard so far today. Can I really accept? In Mahayana Buddhism, they say, we have a Buddha inside us. It's kind of a little more accessible way of thinking about it. We have a Buddha inside us, just waiting to wake up. Do we believe it? Or do we take our everyday mind with all its issues and problems and our ego and our self-centeredness, do we take this is who I really am? And that's like a fairy story. Now again, I would imagine most of you who are here have been exposed to Buddhism, either through our own community or other places. There is nothing that's being taught here tonight from this sutra that you haven't heard. The actual meaning of the word Buddha is somebody who's awakened to their wisdom mind. Awakened to their wisdom mind means their wisdom mind is already here. They just awake to it. And then the Buddha, as he said earlier, he realizes the nature of my mind is the same for everyone. Everybody can awaken to their mind. But we don't believe it, right? Because we're too busy what? Let's go back to the burning house. We're too busy what? Playing with our toys. Right? What's on Netflix tonight? Nothing against Netflix, but I'm just using that as an example. It's like, yeah. We sell out our long-term possibilities for short-term pleasures, short-term fixes, short-term feel-goods, right? Do we like to feel good? Yeah. Do we like pleasure? Yeah. Right? Do we like enjoyment? Yeah. Do we like having fun? Yeah. Right? Problem is what? Doesn't last. It lasts only as long as you're doing what you're doing. As soon as you stop doing it, you're back to the same old, same old. So you got to keep working it. But what if you were able to touch that place in you that always feels good, always feels whole, always feels complete, always feels at ease? And you found that place in you. What would that be like? But most of us would say what? Too busy. Maybe next lifetime. Right? Maybe after, I get this and get that, and I get this part of my life all together, and I get that part of my life all together, and get this out and get this in, then maybe. But it's right here. So just take a moment to reflect. Again, I'm just tonight, I'm just a messenger boy. Right? I'm just sharing with you this profound teaching. Ancient teaching. The Lotus Sutra. Lotus is a symbol, great symbol within Buddhism. The lotus grows in the mud. This great, beautiful flower, its roots are in the mud, in the muck. Right? the same way, many of us, we're kind of stuck in the muck, and yet we can grow a beautiful lotus in the muck. Any questions? Yes?
You know, I've heard you teach this sutra, I guess, a number of years ago, and it's beautiful, it's profound. I think tonight something else that I hadn't really thought about before is when you said, yes, this is what you teach, these teachings from the Lotus Sutra, this is what we hear from you oftentimes in the hall. But then when you started tonight, you were talking about kind of Buddhism being more fragmented at the time that the sutra was written and these different yanas and so forth. And I guess it's just striking me how incredibly, I've never really deeply understood the Mahayana sutras coming hundreds of years after the Buddha's death and maybe purporting to be his words or not, I'm not sure. But it's striking me, yes, how incredibly important and profound this must have been at the time, because so many religions go off track or they become religions and they have these schisms. And so here it is, this beautiful sutra bringing, it seems, back to the heart of what the Buddha was trying to say. So I guess it's just giving me a deeper appreciation of these sutras.
Yeah, again, kind of from a historical point of view, yeah, that was the role of the Lotus Sutra. I mean, it obviously has many teachings, but it kind of like, there were these different yanas, these different paths. Some were higher, some were lower. This kind of puts it all back. There's only one. The Buddha taught one thing: awakening. The path to awakening. He only taught, the Bodhisattva path, the path of compassion and love. And all these, Thich Nhat Hanh was like that. His point was, all the Buddha's teaching have wisdom. Right? I mean, he was a very non-denominational Buddhist. He was very non-denominational for all religions. It's like, they're all just different ways of expressing the same truth. Right? So it's teaching of, there's only, essentially one path, the path to awakening, the Bodhisattva path. Right? Wake up, help liberate all beings. That's the path. Right? And whatever piece of that you have is a piece of it. Right? Wherever you are on the path, you're on the path. Good. It's like that. Any other comments or questions before we end? Well, thank you, everyone. We have one more class on Thursday night. We may continue with maybe other sections of the Lotus Sutra, or we may veer into something else for the evening. I hope this has been just giving you a little taste. Again, certainly invite you to begin to explore. Thich Nhat Hanh has a very wonderful book on the Lotus Sutra. Peaceful Action. Can anybody help me? What's it called? But it's like two things: peaceful heart, peaceful action, or peaceful action, or I'm making that up, but something like that. Anyhow, it's him, but it's based on the Lotus Sutra, and he goes chapter by chapter. I certainly recommend, if you're interested in getting to something like the Lotus Sutra, that you read some commentarial thing, and Thich Nhat Hanh's thing is a wonderful way to because he goes into each chapter. I mean, as you can see, these things are incredibly, the people who wrote these things, not only were they incredibly wise, but they were poets. They were writers. I mean, the language is just over the top, and there's a lot of repetition. Why is there a lot of repetition? Because these things were memorized. So a lot of repetition helps, people used to memorize them, recite them. So repetition helps with that. So anyhow, let me share the merit. Whatever benefit may have come from our study and experience of the Lotus Sutra tonight, may it be shared equally with everyone we encounter, whether near or far away, and may its effects ripple continuously to aid in the healing and transformation of the world. Thank you all for joining here in the hall, those online, and we have one more class on Thursday night. Good night, everybody. Thank you.